Good morning, Power Boosters. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin. This week's video is a little bit different. I'm going to be interviewing a fellow YouTuber, fellow Power Booster, and it's a long one, so strap in. And without further ado, let's get to the interview. All right, Doc, thanks for joining me on my channel. Last week, you and I did on your channel a nice live video. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, Kevin. Hey, and hello everybody out there in Kevin land.
Yeah, so Doc and I from the Fix or Repair DIY channel. If you have not checked out his channel yet, I'd be surprised if you didn't at this point, but if you have not, I put in the description of this video how you can connect to his channel and subscribe to it because quite honestly, it's a better channel than mine. And Craig and I are both Power Boost owners, and he's much smarter than me. And you can, when you're done watching my videos and realizing I could do better, then you'll see Doc doing it better on his channel.
We're just here to have fun. I mean, it's funny because my original channel, like I put this together about a year ago, and I was like, oh, I want to fix or repair daily. That's the name of the channel. I want to do that. And like there's already like 3 or 4 other fix or repair crappy little channels with like 2 videos on them. So I'm like, all right, that's taken. Or found on roadside dead, or all the other great Ford acronyms are out there. So Fix or Repair DIY it was.
Yeah, well, I would say your channel for me when I was waiting for my truck was very useful because your first series on there was all about how to navigate the system of finding out where your truck is in the process of being made and being shipped and whatnot. And there's some pretty intricate things that you need to do. Sometimes like on the rail site, I remember you had to go in and you had to hack the HTML code or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, there was it was like a shipping website they would show you where it was, and they got sick of all the retail customers out there, jumping on the site and like looking up the location of the rail car. And so they hid it behind the code until we figured out how to hack into that. And then eventually they fixed that too. So it's, I also called up the rail companies. I'm like, yeah, I'm a, like so-and-so with so-and-so company. I'm with the Ford dealership up in, whatever. And which was true, right? I was representing the Ford dealership, that I was waiting for. And I'm like, yeah, I'm wondering where this rail car is. Can you help me find it? And
See, this is why Doc is much more intelligent than I am, because basically what I would have thought to have done is just go to a railroad track and stand there and maybe just watch the trains as they're going by to see if I could see any trucks on them. That'd be about the extent of how I would research that. I wouldn't go through the all the rigors of calling up and assuming a different identity, hacking the computer system. That's some high level stuff.
Well, if you guys are for those of you that are out there, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are listening to this channel and this broadcast today, that you've ordered a truck and you're waiting for it. Now it's getting better because when Kevin and I ordered last year, you literally could not, there was no inventory anywhere. It was like, unobtainium. There was just nothing out there. And so you had to order it. And so really no test drives, you had no idea what the Power Boost was like or anything. So it was entirely on faith that you bought these things. So like you have this incredible sense of like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Like what's this truck like? So you want to find out everything about it, including where it is in the build process and everything. And Ford's website was not so good. And you got to learn how to read it, like, oh, the little dot has slid over, but it's not highlighted yet. So you learn to read between the lines of all this stuff. And it turned into kind of like an obsession, quite honestly, and during the wintertime, nothing else is going on. After the Super Bowl, the sports suck, there's nothing else to watch. And it's like, well, let me just track my truck, and see.
Well, I would say that hockey is worthwhile, depending on if your team is in the postseason at that point in time. But
yeah, we have a minor league team here called the Swamp Rabbits. So
that's a great name.
I'm sure, has heard of them.
Yeah. So Another thing that talking about, waiting for your truck and looking at the system on there. One thing that I learned is there's something called a job one or order one, and then job two, which is like they basically have a break in the production in between the first run of the model year, and then there's things that can change based on options and what they do to the truck. So there could be slight variations within the same model year depending on what they've determined. And in the case of the pandemic and whatnot, was having more to do with like maybe they were missing a certain part that they needed to build the trucks, and so the trucks either took longer or they just flat out omitted it altogether or omitted that as an option. So mine actually ended up being a job two truck, and I didn't think much got omitted from that, from the job one trucks. But I think what happened to my truck is that it quite possibly it would have been done a little bit longer and possibly had some of the rust on the bottom if it was a job one truck. So I think I kind of like escaped a lot of the significant rust underneath because mine was in that second run of trucks. But anyway, so the real reason I wanted you on the on my channel is to pick your brain, because your videos are very, very well put together. And I wanted the people on my channel, those who watch my videos regularly, to perhaps get to know you a little bit better. And in the process, I'll do the same. I'll get to know you a little bit better as well, too. So I had kind of a question, which, it doesn't necessarily have to do with trucks, but has to do with vehicles, because I know that I can think back and remember all the cars that I had. But can you, to the best of your ability, give us a chronological history of your first car till your first truck, which if you guys aren't familiar, both Doc and I, this is our first trucks. We both have the Power Boost 2022 Power Boost Lariats. So can you do that? Or can you at least give us a snippet of the highlights of going through? Because I know I've already had a lot of cars. I'm sure you've had a lot of cars.
Um, yeah, I could go down the rabbit hole like you wouldn't believe on this one. Unfortunately, so there's only so much time we have. But
Yeah, you can high
let me
spot. You
let
don't
me
have to.
let me bracket the two sides of that, because there's a whole bunch of Hondas in the middle. Let me put it that way. There's all I did was just drive Hondas, and I would just drive them into the ground, or I'd pass them on to my family and get another one, and things like that. But my first car was actually I thought I wasn't going to live through the day. Um, you know, they always say that you tend to, and I learned this from Hannibal Lecter, right? So Hannibal Lecter is a very smart guy, and so he says that you covet things that you see every day, right? So I'm pulling this right out of Silence of the Lambs. And so every day when I was walking to high school, I would see this 1971 Camaro, and it was just like, oh man, that is such a cool car. And it's like, I found out who owned it, and I was like, hey, if you ever sell that car, and she goes, okay, I'll let you know. And so she calls me up one day and she goes, hey, you want to buy my car? And, I'm selling it. Yeah. And so, I'm 17 years old. I can't legally buy one. So, and my father had already put his foot down and said, you're not driving until you're 18. And so I'm like, well, the logic was, all right, I'm going to buy this car, put it in the garage and work on it for a year until I get to be 18. And then I'm going to be, badass. And so I worked a deal with my mother because she had to sign for the title and all that stuff. I couldn't legally do that. And my dad got home. There's a 71 Camaro in the driveway. He literally just about, I mean, I could hear him coming up the stairs all the way.
Oh
It
man,
was it was not a good
you
day.
went over his head to your mom, which I've definitely been there before.
Yeah, so I screwed up. I went around the old man. So the good news was he cut a deal with me. He goes, all right, you fix that thing up and you sell it, and I'll let you get your license. So it was kind of it was a pseudo blackmail deal, I think. But so I was driving before I was 18. So it's, and it's funny too, because Kevin, like, kids, and I've had a couple of kids, and they just weren't that interested in driving. A lot of younger kids are just, they're more interested in what gaming console that they can get. And when I was growing up, that's all that we could think about because it was getting out of the house and having freedom and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my first car. My first legal car was a 74 Volkswagen Beetle, which is what everybody had back then. And it was just a piece of garbage. The frame rails were rotted out, so there was no heat in the front. I had to scrape the window from the inside in the wintertime and just frozen. Blew the engine completely. I was changing the oil. I'm like, what's this piece of copper in the oil here? What is this thing? It was
Oh,
part of a main bearing. I didn't know it. And I'm
yeah.
like, how did that piece of copper get sucked into the oil here? Main bearing, yeah. So,
Yikes.
that was kind of the front end of things. And then eventually, I got into the Honda. When I was out of college and started working, and I just owned Hondas. They were just the best cars. And I figured I'd put about 1 million miles on my Hondas through the years with really not so much as, like, I think I blew an alternator once in one of my Accords and things like that. I just always maintained them well. Always, was always driving a lot because we lived pretty far from the office. And then, actually my last car I went through the Audis for a while there. I'm like, oh, I want to do an A6 and supercharge. That was fun. But, the problem with the German cars is that they just do not age well. And the electronics do not age well. They get old very, very fast. Who wants to repair, you know, uh, and quite honestly, I think I wanted to get an Audi after watching some of the Transporter movies. I was like, "Oh man, that's it. That's the car I want." So the last car I had was a 2018 Honda Accord. It's one of the new models. Very nice. It's a sport edition. It was cherry red and it's like a badass looking car, and I loved it. But then I'm like, you know what? I need a truck. I need a truck. And it's just the truck mania came in. And you and I talked about this last time. Originally, I was going to get a Tundra,
Mhm.
and until the attitude of the dealers and the Tundras, whoa, there's a market adjustment. Hey, you're going to be privileged to spend another $5,000 on top of MSRP to buy one of our trucks. And like, goodbye.
So
And
that's another thing that I wanted to ask you, having to do with that, because I remember us talking about that last week. So do you think, let's say the Fords didn't exist and the Power Boost didn't exist, what do you think the Tundra is the next best option, the Tundra hybrid now? Let's play devil's advocate and say that that doesn't even exist. What is the best option on the market for someone looking for a truck today that, for example, maybe can't afford an F-150 Power Boost or doesn't want one?
if I could not get the power boost, and this is after owning one of these, and this is after spending the entire year immersed literally in the world of Ford and pickup trucks and everything. I would say if you can't do a power boost, I would without hesitation get a 2.7 liter EcoBoost. That is, I've heard nothing but good things about that engine. They've got um, what are those things called? The things that, no, I'm forgetting the name now. That it runs the timing chain on that.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree
I'll
there.
I'll think of it right near the end of it. But
Yeah,
the previous years of EcoBoost, everybody is run into those things. I forget the name of them. But they've got it fixed. So the 2.7, everybody says, man, there's more than enough power here. The only thing it doesn't do is, obviously you can't get the 7.2 kilowatt generator on there, but yeah, a 2.7, you get similar fuel economy without the hybrid stuff, without the complexity and everything. So if I couldn't do the power boost, I would do a 2.7 liter.
yeah, I think for me, I would probably do the Eco Diesel and the Sierra 1500. I think for my purposes, the fuel economy, because I do a lot of highway miles, that's probably the way I'd go. I've never had a diesel vehicle before. I have watched several videos of that, people with, because obviously it's the same one that they put in the Chevys as well, where people have issues, sometimes starting them in really extreme temperatures. But I've seen some cold starts on those in temperatures that I would regularly see where I'm at, and I'd feel comfortable, with one of those for the short term. It doesn't necessarily have the functionality of the power inverter, but if it didn't exist, that's where I would be. But I do agree with you with the 2.7. I think it's a great option if you're not going to get the power boost because of the fuel economy. And also for someone like me, at least I would say that I'm not going to be doing much towing, if at all, and not putting it under super heavy loads and just more looking for some of the utility out of a truck, then I would say that would be the case. So you touched on it a little bit. Can you explain the exact desire that you had for a truck? I mean, you came from Hondas. That seems like such like a 180 in terms of what type of vehicle that you would generally look for.
It's funny because I'm thinking about my next video. Like, we're always looking for interesting things to talk about when it comes to this, and I think my next video is going to be why you should sell your Honda Accord and get a pickup truck.
All right, let's not
Because
talk anymore about it because we'll let you have that video.
no, well, I mean, it's what happened to me was, there's this. I'm going to get into neuroscience here a little bit, but which is
I'll
not
allow
what
it.
you expected to do. But there's this thing. Have you ever noticed something like when you get into something, when you start taking an interest in it, all of a sudden you see it everywhere. It's everywhere. It's like everywhere you look, it's like, and you never noticed something before, and all of a sudden it's everywhere. It's a little function of your brain called the reticular activating system. And basically what it's doing is it's telling your eyes and ears and all your senses to look for that specific thing. And this is why two people can have an auto accident and they both come away with different stories, because people tend to see what they want to see. And so all of a sudden, I don't recall what it was that sort of caused this mania, but I just got truckitis. I don't know what it was, but it was like, part of it was I built it's not really a shed. It's almost like a second house in the back of our yard. Because we don't have in the South, a lot of times you don't have garages. And we don't have a garage at our house. We have a nice driveway, no garage. So we needed something back there. So I built that. And I'm hauling all this stuff. I'm hauling plywood and OSB and roofing and everything like that in this 2007 Honda Odyssey, where I've got the seats stripped out. And I'm like, oh, this is such a pain in the ass, because it's like you got to put the seats back in and just to be able to slide a 4x8 sheet into there. And I'm like, man, I really need a truck. And it started to just kind of germinate and grab hold on there. And then, the first thing I thought was, well, I want to get a Toyota because I want this thing to last for like 800 years. And I see everywhere I look was Tundras all around me with the 5.7 liter. But man, you start looking at them like, no, don't touch that, because you're going to get 12 to 13 miles a gallon. So I was like, oh, the new models are coming out. And then, like you and I talked about, I just think the Toyota just took too long. And then I started looking at the Fords, and it was like, wow, they're really, really, really like very advanced with this. They're way ahead of everybody else. And something else, I'm kind of going down a rat hole here, but do you know who Doug DeMuro is?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've watched lots of his videos.
The guy,
quirks and features.
quirks and features. But he did a video like in the last week or so, and he talked about Ford made a very radical decision back in 2018 that they were going to ditch all their car line. They're going to get rid of the Focus. They're going to get rid of the Edge. They're going to get rid of the Taurus and all these other models of cars that they were making, and focus on SUVs and trucks. And oh, by the way, a Mustang. And DeMuro actually said they actually did the right thing. Everybody was just like questioning them at the time. And if you look at what they've been able to do, not that I'm a Ford fanboy or anything like that, but man, I'm really, really impressed by what they've been able to put together. And they are light years ahead, I think, of a lot of the competition. Some people might say, the Ram trucks are better interiors and stuff like that, but man, the total package, like, I am so impressed right now with the power boost still after 9 months of driving this thing. It's just incredible what it's able to do.
You got to think that the other, obviously that they've they've got the Lightning electric truck, and then the Silverado is going to have the electric truck, and there's all these other shoot brands that are going to have electric trucks. But you have to think that Ram and GM are going to counter and come up with their own hybrid powertrain, whether it be a plug-in or something similar to what's going on the Ford. What do you think?
Oh, of course they will. And competition makes everybody better. But there's a certain advantage to being first to market with something. There's a huge advantage that Tesla had. They've got they literally have 10 years of making electric cars, and people are now just getting into that and saying, "Hey, look at our car." And it's like, yeah, but Tesla's been doing it for, I mean, they're still, they just announced their earnings last week, I think it was, and their numbers are just outrageous. They're still blowing it out of the water. And so they've got this big lead on people. So they're still going to have that lead on people where they have that motivation. So I think Ford is also going to have that same lead, because actually they beat Tesla to the market with an electric pickup truck. And I think I think the Lightning just got named. I don't know who it was. I don't think it was Consumer Reports. It was somebody like Motor Trend or Edmunds. They got their 2023 Vehicle of the Year was the Lightning. So
Yeah, they're definitely cool. I've never seen one. Well, I saw one driving on the highway, but I've never seen one up close in person, been able to inspect the inside, but seen lots of videos.
yeah,
Um, Obviously, the thing that would keep me from buying an electric vehicle are having to do more with cost, maybe a little bit with the lack of infrastructure and the present job that I have, and then also somewhat worries of reduced battery efficiency in the colder months, because I do live in a climate where the winters get pretty cold. And if I'm driving in the way that I do in the summer, and needing to drive that same distance in the winter, I may have issues with charging. So,
what
but I
kind of
think
a
it's all,
daily what kind of a daily loop are you putting in?
it depends. I go all over the Western New York area, close to the PA border, up to Niagara Falls, and anywhere in between. And it depends on the specific day. It can be different week to week as well too. But I can drive 200 or 300 miles in a day, and that's getting right up there close to the where I would start to see troubles. And I just don't know that I'm ready to take the plunge on that yet. And then having all that installed in your house, the systems to have the charging done is another expense that everyone's eventually going to have to pony up to do, which I know I hopefully in my lifetime, if I'm fortunate enough to live long enough, I will live in a time where there's the majority of vehicles on the road are, maybe they're not completely electric, but at least they're more responsible for the environment and their output into the environment. That's my hope. I kind of, I understand that there's always going to be a love affair with the internal combustion engine, because you can't take away that from those of us that have lived with these vehicles. And I think they'll always exist, but obviously there's going to be more and more regulations as time goes on. I don't see how there wouldn't be. But
It truly, my son is a gearhead, and he always was a gearhead. When he was a kid, he was always involved in mechanical things, and he's gotten into the whole sort of racing thing. And he's also gotten into sort of the YouTube cult of like the Cletus McFarlands and, guys like that. I don't know if you know who he is, but
no.
he's a YouTuber down in the Tampa St. Pete area, and he bought his own racetrack. Let's put it that way.
Oh, wow.
He found an old racetrack and bought it and refurbished it and runs his own events now. And then he rents out things like the Bristol Speedway up in Bristol, Tennessee, and for private events and stuff like that. It's just amazing how the world of cars has, like, just completely exploded, especially over the past 10, 20 years. I mean, where it used to be sort of a passing phase, and now it's just a mania. So I agree with you. I don't think it's going to go away, even though I like driving. I like that sense of driving electric, and I'm sure that you do it from time to time in your Power Boost, where you're like maybe going down a hill a little bit or going on flat. And it's like, I really like that feel of that sort of like rubbery feel of, driving on the electric motor. But it's, yeah, So many people are reaching out to me. I don't know if they're doing the same thing with you, Kevin, and like, why didn't Ford put a bigger battery in there, and why didn't they do this and that? And it's pretty simple, right? Why would you destroy your market for the Lightning? When you've got a perfect hybrid here with, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's meant to just do a power boost, and that's
Well,
about
I,
it.
like your listeners, was also questioning that, and what you just brought up makes perfect sense. They're obviously very smart, and they have a team of very smart people and engineers and people who know how to sell things and market things, that they wouldn't want to compete with themselves. That's for sure. But at least they're positioning themselves in a way to, if for some reason, um, the cars with engines, gas engines go away, or get highly regulated, at least they're in a position where they've got that next step, and can pretty much already have their market share.
Yeah, I agree with you. I looked at potentially getting an electric vehicle when this thing came around, and it was like, oh boy, the lead times are so bad. I think the distribution chain is still not, the network's still not there yet. If I were to, I don't do that many long trips, but when I do them, it's like you want to get there. You don't want to be, you don't want to turn a 12-hour trip into an 18-hour trip just because of the charging, or a 2-day trip because of that. It's just not worth that to me.
Yeah, I mean, I might consider that for like a road trip, if, as long as you had it built into the travel time and your vacation and whatnot. I don't think that would be so much of hindrance for me to get an electric vehicle. To, like, if I decided I wanted to take this on a road trip, it might add to the enjoyment of, like, kind of figuring out your stops on the way, and you can build in some extra vacation-y things to do while you're doing that. Or maybe you'll talk to someone at the charge station. You'll meet a new friend. Wouldn't that be nice?
Well, a lot of them are at like Walmarts and things like that. And there's a bunch of other retail clustered there. So you can kind of set
Well,
up your meal schedule around your
well,
charging.
I've definitely met some interesting people at Walmart before, so that's. I have some more questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So we talked about, you asked me about modding my truck, and if I did any mods, and I think you talked about doing a light bar and whatnot. But I want to talk about the features that are actually inherent in the truck when you purchase it as stock. And I'll give you a second to think about this. What do you think is your least favorite feature? And then what is your most favorite feature that came on the truck that maybe you decided after some usage, you said, wow, I didn't realize I would like this so much, but it ends up being something that I really enjoy using on day to day. I have an answer for myself. And if you don't have an answer, I will tell everyone my answer, but I'm more interested to hear if you have an opinion on that.
Probably the thing that I like the most, which is not something I gave it any thought before I bought it, was the exterior lighting, the welcome lighting, or whatever you want to call it. I've been corrected on this, and I call it welcome lighting. But you walk up to the truck with a key in your pocket, and all of a sudden the thing lights up like, kind of like that scene of that forward operating base from Apocalypse Now. The thing like turns into this big, lit up, and it's so useful. It is so useful. All the bed lighting and all that stuff. And, I would do deliveries and stuff like that at 6:30 in the morning, and you know, it can get kind of shaky with doing something like that. Like, hey, what are you doing? And you turn all the lights on your truck, and it's like, oh, well, you're delivering. So there's no question. I mean, it's the utility of something like that is just so amazing. And it's a simple feature, but they do it so well. And for example, the Tundra does not have that, to my knowledge. So that's one of the features I never expected that I would like, and I just love it to death. Like in my dark driveway, like I come up to the truck and boom, it's like, hello, welcome. And I just love that feature. I'm
I wanted to
trying to
love
put
that
some,
feature.
I'm trying to put some thought into the feature I like the least.
Well, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell people that I was so excited about that welcome lighting feature because I think it's also very cool. But I live in a city and our houses are very close together and our driveways are very close to the house. And my key when I'm walking around in my house, like in my kitchen, because my driveway's right there, the light kept on going on, and I'm like, I have to deactivate the welcome lighting. So I can't actually, I don't have it on there, right? It's not turned on right now. I went into the menu and disabled it, but I do enjoy the the surround lighting. Why am I blanking on the name of the surround lighting? The zone lighting is what they call it. I've used that many times, and that is very useful. And like you said, it is very simple. It's a simple feature, and it's almost just like it's nothing that you think is going to be it's not a very expensive feature, but it's incredibly useful, and I'm very happy that it's there. So
Oh, I remember the thing I was trying to remember before. They're called cam phasers. They adjust the timing of the
that's how
camshafts.
brains work, people. That comes
Yeah,
back around.
cam phasers. But supposedly they're fixed in our model, and they're never going to go bad on us. The thing I now this is admittedly a nerdy thing, and this is just because I love doing maintenance on the car. It's just sort of a form of being nice to it. Is I do as much of my own simple maintenance as possible that I can do, without having a lift and without having a garage. So I will change my oil, and it is just a complete pain in the ass to do the oil on this truck, because it's not so much the 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 dropping or the adding the oil, it's getting the filter out of the front of the engine. And you have to kind of wind your hand into past all these tubes and, connections and everything like that, and somehow get a filter wrench on there and torque it and get it out of there. And it's spilling oil all over the place. And it just kind of sucks.
Maybe it's another thing that Ford did intelligently, so that you would have to bring it in. You get so frustrated, you have to bring it in and pay their service departments, and I don't know. I might
I,
have something there.
I just, I've had so many bad experiences, Kevin, through the years of people working on my vehicle and just doing a shitty job with it. Like I've had people repair brakes and put the return springs on the wrong way. I had somebody do a head job on I had lost the head gasket because it was boiling over. So they had to replace the head gasket. Normally what you do is you machine the top of the heads and do a valve job on there. And the camshaft slipped because, and some of your more mechanically adept members will understand this. They didn't put the Woodruff key on the camshaft. So the camshaft gear was never locked into the camshaft. It was just tightened on with a bolt. And eventually what happened is I'm just driving one day with my wife and kid, and just the engine just stopped. And I went to go start it again, and there was no compression because the camshaft was off just by that much. And there was this, like, it would just spin the engine like that. Bad memory. So I just have all these memories of people just doing a crappy job of maintenance on there. And I was just like, damn it, I got to do this myself. And so I've done a lot of my own maintenance, mostly oil changes and things like that through the years, but, brake jobs, changing out bearings, things like that were relatively simple to do. But yeah, that's my answer on the thing I like the least is,
No,
and
that's
that's
great.
not really a feature of it's just a pain in the ass to change the oil on these
No,
things.
that definitely counts. Yeah. So another thing I wanted to talk about briefly, and I was thinking about this today as I was driving around because it was very very windy out today. It's also cold. It's also winter. Um, so in your experience and you live in a more southerly climate, what do you think affects in your area the MPG more on the truck? Is it the wind? Is it the colder temperatures? Is it your driving style and what drive mode you're in? Is it the fuel type? Is it the terrain? For me, I think it's the wind. That's the one where I noticed the most drop in MPGs, but I'm curious as to what your answer would be.
One of the things that I was sort of surprised about when I moved down here 3 years ago. So right now I live in upstate South Carolina, and we have the Blue Ridge Mountains literally 10 miles to our northwest. So it blocks. So we've this whole ice storm that's coming across from Texas, like the mountains kind of block it and push everything up towards the northeast, towards you guys.
Mhm.
So
Thanks. You
yeah,
can
you're
just move
welcome.
the mountains, Doc,
So
get 'em out of there.
we don't get that much wind, and it's crazy. I was doing pilot training. I was trying to get my private pilot license in Columbus, Ohio, and it
I
just
also did that.
oh, did you actually get it?
No, I ended up stopping because I was flying in the simulator on days that we couldn't actually go up in the air, and I just realized I was crashing every time. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm gonna be up in the air and I'm gonna crash. So I got a motorcycle instead, which was neither here. You were saying, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I got 65 hours in, and I almost got up to I got to the point where they were going to schedule me for my exam, and the plane that I was flying went down. It was a Piper, which is a low wing plane,
Hmm.
and
Yep,
they
I was
said,
on
"Well,
a
we don't
Piper
have any
Warrior
other
as well.
Pipers." What's that?
I was on a Piper Warrior as well too. That was the plane
That
I
was a
was in.
Piper Warrior. It was
Because the
PA.
Cessnas have the high wings and
So the high wing. So they said, "Well, we have a whole fleet of these old 172s, so you're going to start flying," and it's completely different. It's
oh, is
complete. The
it?
ground effect is total. Like it was like, oh, starting all over again. Anyway, that's but so there's no wind down here.
Hmm.
And I guess the point I was going to make is like flying in Columbus, Ohio was like it's windy all the time. There's always 18 knots of wind coming across, and it was just I got down here and there's just no wind at all. And
That
it
wouldn't
was
be it. That wouldn't affect the MPG down there. Or not as much.
no. So for me, to answer your question, for me, it's all about it's ambient temperature, which makes it tougher on the battery to maintain its charge, and it's all about winter blend fuel.
Hmm.
So those are two things. Now I can still do okay on eco mood, the eco, and I don't get. I think you did some work on this as well too. I don't get anywhere near the same mileage on normal mode as eco, and I have to really go gentle on it. I can still do mileage in the mid 20s if I'm really careful with it. But right now, like if I'm just, I can tell I've taken at least a 2 to 3 mpg hit just due to the temperatures and the what I assume to be winter blend is taking a hit too.
So today I was driving along the lake. I was going down south, closer to the PA border from Buffalo area, and the prevailing wind was out of the southwest, and quite often it's out northwest or southwesterly wind. And on the way down, the trip computer, and I'm just giving you this number for point of reference because the trip computer on mine doesn't really accurately reflect the actual MPG, but just to give you an idea, it was around 18 and a half miles per gallon on the way down. And then it was about 24 and a half miles per gallon on the way back up.
Wow.
So that led me to believe, because it's still relatively cold today. It's winter. There wasn't a huge amount of inclement weather or snow or anything like that, but I think that the truck is just basically like a big brick driving down the throughway, and if you're going right into the wind, it's definitely having to work a little bit harder, and you don't really see it going into electric mode as much. And that particular side, because it's basically just going alongside the eastern side of Lake Erie, there's not a whole lot of undulation on the throughway at that point in time to create much terrain difference until you get off the throughway and go further east. But yeah, that's crazy just to think about. I mean, the obviously we're on the winter blend here as well too, so that's just relative to whatever. But
I think the terrain has less of an effect than you would think. At least that's what I found, because when I've really tried hard to hypermile in here, I get into a lot of there's a lot of very we're at the foothills of the Blue Ridge here, and so there's quite a bit of elevation changes. So you would think that well, that's going to be terrible for Not really, because if you go easy on the way up, use your momentum, use conservation of momentum and everything like that on the way up, and don't use cruise control unless you have to, unless you're on a flat, straight area. And then, as you're descending, try to get into electric mode as soon as possible. I was getting some really just stupid numbers, like up in the high 20s, driving, some of the local, back lane country roads around here, the 45, 50 miles an hour kind of
I
thing.
think that's a sweet spot for this truck.
It
I
is.
honestly
Oh,
do, because I see other people with this powertrain, a couple other people post videos, and you see them driving around and they're driving at those speeds in that kind of area. So yeah.
yeah. And but I can't do those numbers right now, but I think I will by the summertime.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good point to end our conversation today. I'd like to thank you, Doc, for being available and willing to come on my channel and show all the people who maybe are unfamiliar with your channel, the Fix or Repair DIY channel on YouTube, linked in the description. Please subscribe to his channel. Just a little bit about yourself and how intelligent you are, and if they are smart, if they really want a Ford F-150, have Ford F-150 Power Boost, or just content involving that. His channel is just a wealth of information.
It's
And I highly recommend it.
it's run by an idiot savant. That's all. I mean, we're just.
Well, I think you're great. And once again, really thank you for coming on the channel. This is my longest video to date. So that's another
Oh, cool.
first, because generally my videos, maybe some of them are when I'm really busy are short 8-minute videos, but then 20 minutes is maybe as long as they usually
Well,
get.
I think you do a good job of helping people, of finding the topics that they really need answers to, and you're 6 months ahead of them, because a lot of these folks are waiting on their trucks and they're dying to know what it's like, and some of the problems that you solve through yours. So I think you're doing a great job with that.
Well, at least I'm helping someone. And if you don't mind, Doc, I'm going to show that last little snippet to my wife, just so that she knows that someone else thinks that. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. That was fun. Thanks again for joining me on the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so now. And having said that, I'll see you guys in the next video.